I want you to imagine that you're a musician. Probably not very difficult to imagine, right? I mean, you're here, so you probably are a musician. And you probably just finished the greatest album you and your band have ever made. So now what? What do you do with all these stems? How do you make this album sound like an album? Obviously, there's mixing that's involved, and you'll need to send this to a mix engineer, but how do you do that? What are the steps, and what will the engineer expect or even require from me before I send this to them? Today I'd like to answer those questions. Today, this video is going to be a little different from what I usually do. As you can see, we're outside. I decided to take a walk. It's a beautiful day out, and I found this gorgeous nature preserve near where I live. So I'd like to take you along with me, and let's discuss. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Kai the Artist. I'm a recording artist, composer, producer, and mix engineer for Paradisioproductions. I've got about 13 years of experience now with mixing on its own, as well as years and years of experience with other types of mixing like mastering and composing and music itself. So let's get started. So you've got your finished song or your finished album, and all the stems are all lined up nicely in your DAW. So the first thing you're going to want to do with those is render them all out individually. One thing your mix engineer is going to thank you for is if they all start at the beginning of the song. In FL Studio, which is the DAW I use, this is really easy to do. On that splash screen you get while you're actually rendering your file, you simply check off the split mixer track setting, and that'll split up all of your individual mixer tracks into individual WAV files, or whatever you render it as. Now, your mix engineer probably loves your song, and they probably want to hear it as you intended it to be heard, and I'm sure you'd like your audience to hear it the same way. If not everything lines up at the beginning, you might run into issues with that. Me as the mix engineer, I've never heard this song before. I don't know what it's supposed to sound like. I don't know if this solo is supposed to start on bar 8 or bar 18. If I put it at bar 8 and it's supposed to be at bar 18, then we're talking about extra revisions. When you get extra revisions in audio engineering, typically the mix engineer is going to charge you a little more per revision. So you definitely want to save yourself and your mix engineer the headache by making sure everything's lined up before you send it. So let's talk a little bit about formatting. Just a minute ago you heard me mention WAV files, or whatever you'd like to render it as. I actually want to take that back. WAV files are all you should render it as. I typically render these at 48 kilohertz, but you can render them down as low as 44 without getting into any issues. You typically want a lossless file to send to your mix engineer. If you send me a .mp3, that's already been compressed, and there's already frequencies that have been taken out of that file, specifically the super high and the super low frequencies. Now, where we run into problems is when I render that out as a WAV file, it's all well and good that it is a WAV file, but it's not. See, it's a .wav, but it only has the information that was in the original file, which was a .mp3. So no matter what, you're always going to get that compression, and your audio is going to sound a little lossier. I've heard arguments both ways, and some people believe that you really can't hear the difference between a WAV and an MP3. Some people believe that's a subconscious difference. Whether or not that's true kind of doesn't make a difference to me. The industry standard is that .wav file because it's the highest quality. So that's what you'll want to stick to, and that's what your mix engineer is going to expect to get from you. I once saw a bumper sticker that said labels are for jars, not people. And I really couldn't agree with that more, but I'd also like to add music to the list of things that labels are for. So let's talk about it. How should we be labeling our tracks? Let's say you've got a guitarist named Mike, right? Mike's a great guy and an even better guitarist. I'm sure I would get along with him great if I met him, but I haven't met him yet. So if I receive a stem that says Mike, I'm not gonna know what it is or entirely what to do with it. If it's just a direct input guitar, I don't know if that's meant to be clean, if that's meant to be distorted, what your vision is. So what would help me is if you tell me, let's say it's the lead guitar number 1. From there, you could put underscores and put some more information in. I tend to do the song name, the key, and the BPM. That gives me a lot of information. If I need to do any pitch correction, I know which key I should be going to and not have to figure that out on my own. Same with the tempo. If I need to quantize anything, that'll save me a lot of time and you a lot of money as the client if I already know where everything should be and how fast the song is. The best stems I've ever received had all that information in them and even some notes from the artists themselves as to what they pictured me doing with it. Understand that the mix engineer is going to have their own vision to a degree and they'll take the song a certain direction that maybe you didn't think of. But if you have something in mind, you need to tell your mix engineer, and keeping it in the title of the track itself is very helpful because then every time they look at that track, they see your notes. So it's something to keep in mind. So all your tracks are rendered out, labeled, and they all start at the beginning of the song. Now it's time to talk about the big scary part, communication. How do you communicate with this mix engineer? Someone you've probably never even met. The first thing I would suggest is be respectful, and this goes for anyone you talk to in the industry. See, we're all doing the same thing. We're all trying to make a living doing what we love, music. So be nice to these people, you know? These are other artists, just like you, working just as hard as you do. Be respectful, be polite, please and thank you, all of that. Secondly, ask about their rate. Don't go in blindly, not knowing how much this person charges. If they're more than you're willing to pay, look for another mix engineer. It's just that simple. Don't try to haggle with these people. We all work hard, like I said. So, it's understandably disrespectful when I come in and say, okay, my rate is, let's say, $25 an hour for the session. And you say, well, I can do 20. You know, there's ways to ask for a discount, but don't try to haggle. If we're not on the same wavelength, we can talk about it, or you can always say, thank you for your time. This isn't going to work for me for this project, but we'll be in touch. Something like that. You know, don't get angry if the mix engineer charges more than you're willing to pay. Again, we all work hard, we're all just trying to make a living. You know, if that's what the mix engineer charges, and let's say it's $50 an hour, and you can't afford that, that's fine. You can always look for another mix engineer and just say, hey, thank you for your time, this isn't going to work, but we'll be in touch. Whether or not you reach back out to them is completely up to you. It's still respectful, and you didn't burn any bridges. As mix engineers, we talk to each other. Musicians as a whole talk to each other, and people in the industry talk to each other. If you're going engineer to engineer, looking for discounts, being disrespectful, trying to get deals and stuff like that, and just not being a good person, other mix engineers are going to find out, or other people working in the industry are going to find out, and they might be a little less apt to work with you in the future. So those were a whole lot of don'ts. But what do I say to this mix engineer? Well, first of all, I would start by telling them the name of your project, or your band, or if you're a standalone, your artist name. Basically, any information about you, something so that the mix engineer can get a feel for you and your style. I'd also let him know what your budget is. See, most of the time when I run into issues with budget with a client, it's after we've already gotten started talking about what the project is. The clients will start telling me their ideas, telling me what they want songs to sound like, what the album's supposed to flow like, and I'm in my head thinking of, okay, I could do this and this here, use these plugins on this song, do this with this guitar solo, and get something really elaborate going that might cost a little more than what the client's looking to spend. I don't know what the client's budget is yet, they don't know what my rate is yet. So we're already at a point where we're not ideal. If you start off telling me, hey, I'm looking to put $150 into this song, get it mixed and mastered as well as it can for that much money, well, we can start working from there. I can figure out, okay, can I do this for that much money? And what would it take for me to do this for that much money? We can have an honest and open dialogue as a client and someone offering a service, being mixing. From there, we can kind of figure out how we can make this work for each other, and if there's discrepancies in budget, we can work them out. So this is absolutely ideal, and it's absolutely super important that you talk to your mix engineer like another person, which of course they are. So when you do this, you won't run into issues, or you'll be less likely to run into issues down the line where you just kind of wash each other's hands of it. Alright, so I think we're getting to about time for me to wrap this up, because I am actually quite lost in this nature conservation right now. I did find these trail markers, so that is promising, but I didn't see them on my way in, so I'm not quite sure where they lead. But back to talking to a mix engineer. The last thing that comes to my mind to tell your mix engineer is who your influences are. What artists influence your sound or the sound you hear in your head? That gives me, as the mix engineer, the opportunity to go and check those artists out, or even better, specific songs out, and try my best to emulate the style of mixing in your music. Now, obviously, I'm not going to copy someone else. That's just not how we do things in music, or at least not how most people do things in music. But if it gives a certain feeling, like if, let's say, the song has a certain kind of warmth to the mix, and you want that, that's something I can absolutely do. Let's say you want the song to feel melancholic almost. That's something that, to a degree, you can do through mixing. Obviously, there's musicality to that too, and we would have to work together as a team to make that happen, but we can make it happen. So it all kind of boils down to having that open and honest line of communication with your mix engineer. The more open you are about what you want and what you can do, the better. The more information I get as the mix engineer, and the better we can work together. So I know this was kind of a different kind of video than what you usually see from me, and if you liked it, please let me know in the comments. Hopefully the wind wasn't so loud that you couldn't hear what I was saying, but I will find out soon enough, and if I do, you probably won't see this video. So thank you again for watching. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. And if there's other types of videos you'd like to see, or gear reviews, plugin reviews, anything like that, please let us know in the comments. Thanks again, and I hope you have a great day.